Welcome to Uncontained, and I'm your host, Aaron Static Render, and I'm not here right now. I'm actually taking the week off, and don't worry though. I'm gonna hook you up with something to listen to. Not gonna leave you just hanging without an episode. I'm going back to the early days of Uncontained with episode 18, featuring somebody that you definitely know. His name is John Lehr. You may know him from his Western show on Hulu called Quick Draw, his show from TBS called 10 Items or Less, but most likely you know him as the Geico Caveman. And I get to sit down and talk with him. Want to make sure that everybody has a chance to listen to this episode because it was buried way back at the beginning of the show. So if you're joining the show a few episodes in, this is your chance to go back and listen to one of the earlier episodes. Here's a flashback or a re-release rather with John Lehr. We talk about his production partner, also his show on Hulu and Howler TV as well. So, and he gives some great advice on pitching shows in a studio environment, in a boardroom. I hope you have a great Labor Day weekend, and definitely you want to tune in, listen to this one with the one, the only, John Lehr, the Geico Caveman, right here on Uncontained.
How are you doing today, John?
Good. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Thank you for coming on. And before we get any further, you want to give my audience a little insight to who you are?
Sure. Yeah, most people know me as the Geico Caveman. That was like my big claim to fame. If I did like 25 of the commercial spots that you saw out there back in the day when the caveman ruled. I've also been on TV shows in guest roles and like Friends, and I was on a show called Jessie, starring Christina Applegate, and things like that, and then and some movies. I guess I most recently in the past few years I've been along with my partner Nancy Hauer. We've been executive producing and creating shows that I often star in. 10 Items or Less was on TBS for 3 seasons. It took place in a grocery store. Jailbait was a show that we did for Crackle, produced by Sony Television. And most recently, we did a show called Quick Draw for Hulu, which was a comedy western, and assorted pilots for Comedy Central and for HBO, 20th Century Fox, that kind of stuff.
All right, great. Yeah, I'm obviously familiar with the caveman commercials, and I've watched quite a few episodes of Quick Draw and 10 Items or Less. Unfortunately, I don't have Crackle,
Yeah.
so I haven't really been able to watch Jailbait.
Yeah.
But I do understand all of your shows kind of have one thing in common. They're kind of written in a special way. There is no actual script written as far as dialogue, correct?
Yeah, that's right. The scripts, Nancy and I write all the scripts, and they're pretty detailed. You'd be surprised, but and they're like as long as normal television scripts, but they don't have any dialogue in them. They're just they kind of read like a short story. And then when the actors are never given the scripts, except for me when I'm acting in it, I mean, I know what's in the script because I wrote it. But the other actors just show up on set. They get into makeup and costume, and they're kind of told what Nancy, my partner, who also directs all the episodes, tells them just enough information, to get them started, and then we go. And Nancy kind of, she coaxes from the director seat, and I coax a little bit from the actor seat, and in the end, we come up with an episode.
All right, cool. So you just described the setting and what all is going on in that, but how do the, I don't know, how do the actors know where to take the role? Are they just taking cues off of you since you know what's going on with the script, or do you give them any clues at the beginning?
No, they help kind of slowly through, when they're auditioning for the role, they start to create the role, and we tell them stuff about their character, like, the backstory of the character, the kinds of things the character likes to do, the kinds of things the character doesn't like to do. So they get a real sense of character, and then they start to build the character themselves, because as they improvise in auditions and then improvise on the set, we start to write for them, and so in a weird way, we're kind of all bringing the show forward together.
Okay, cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. But I'm sure it's a lot of hard work too.
Yeah, I mean, it's long hours, and you definitely earn your money, because you're not, you don't just say three lines and then go back to your trailer. It's kind of like a reality show, where you improvise a lot. So you'll be on set all day. Each take is different, so you're constantly kind of creating. But yeah, I mean, that's what it's so fulfilling and satisfying for the actors, because we really, we build the whole thing around the actors, and making them comfortable and letting them do what they're, gifted at doing, which is improvising. So that's the whole point of what we're trying to do, is get to that comedy that you can only get to when it comes up spontaneously.
Okay, yes, and it's hard to make something sometimes that somebody else wrote be funny like you would say it. So, and as you were saying, spontaneously, sometimes those are the funniest moments you'll ever catch.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you crack your friends up and you guys all die laughing, but then if you tried to repeat it, it wouldn't be as funny. That's kind of the energy we're after.
Exactly, that you had to be their moment, just throwing that out there.
Exactly.
Um, how did you find out that you were more inclined to be the go with the improvised style of acting opposed to the standard memorize your lines, go out there and deliver what the director's telling you to?
There was I went to school at Northwestern. That's where I graduated college, and they had an improv show called the Meow Show, which was kind of old school improv, where it was a lot of sketches and games, and but I loved it. I couldn't believe, that you could say whatever you wanted, and I thrived in that. And so when I graduated, I was in Chicago, and which is, the birth of improvisation, really, or at least the epicenter. And that's, I just started taking classes at Second City and some of the improv schools there, and started performing, started doing improv in bar gigs in Chicago, and that sort of started me down the path.
Okay, cool. So have you had any quote unquote standard acting jobs, or
Yeah.
have they all been improvised?
Well, I guess the standard ones would be, some of my guest star roles on Friends, or Lois and Clark. I did a season of a standard sitcom called Jesse on NBC. I've done some movies, Kicking and Screaming for Noah Baumbach, and Mr. Jealousy, another film called Highball. So yeah, I have done that stuff. Even the Geico Caveman commercials were all scripted, but they would let me improvise at the end. And it's definitely, I just found that when I was improvising, that's when, the directors perked up. That's what I brought to the table. So I
Okay.
pursued that.
Okay, cool, cool. So you have some big news going on with Howler. It's well, Howler is you and Nancy, right?
Nancy Hauer, John
Howler.
Lehr. So we squeezed them together and called it Howler. And we've started a site called Howler.tv, which is a video streaming site where we're able to start bringing some of the material and stuff that we're, maybe it's too edgy, or maybe stuff that we just don't want to try to put into the, television machine, and put it on Howler.tv. For example, right now we're developing a television pitch on Howler.tv with our fans. So we're walking through every step of a television pitch. And the first step when we pitch a television show to a network is we first make what we call a demo reel. Some people call it a sizzle reel. I hate that term, but uh, it's like a 5 minute, 5 to 10 minute piece that sort of shows it kind of gives you a sense of what the show is about. Gives you the tone and the comedy and maybe some of the characters. That when we go in and pitch a network, we usually start with a sizzle reel and play the sizzle reel, and then we do the verbal pitch after. So right now we're developing the sizzle reel online with our fans and supporters, and they're like giving us notes on different cuts. It's really cool. So we've been shooting the scenes that are going to be in the sizzle reel, and we're getting close. We're getting close to finishing the sizzle reel. So then we're going to start talking about how we sort of develop characters and how we present them to executives, and then ultimately we're going to go in and pitch and film it. Maybe we're still trying to figure out exactly how we're going to do that, but we're going to film it with secret cameras or whatnot.
Okay.
And so that people can get a sense of what it's like to develop and hopefully sell a TV show and sort of experience it with us.
That is really cool. I'll have to link to that for my show, because my show has kind of an educational aspect to it as well.
Yeah.
And it'll also, kind of help promote you as well. But it has an educational aspect. So for people who are just getting started out in the entertainment business, who may want to know how to proceed to get a show seen by executives like you are doing now.
Yeah, we're going to talk about every aspect of it in terms of how to get agents, how to present to agents, where different platforms that you can sell a show to, whether it's a streaming platform or a network or basic cable, and the sort of pitfalls, the pros and cons to each one. So yeah, we'll be talking for people who are interested in how to pitch a TV show and how that works. I think it would be really helpful to them.
Sounds really exciting. I actually want to see what goes on inside the meeting with the secret cameras.
Some meetings we know we can bring a camera in. Like when we pitch to our agents, we're gonna convince them to let us bring a camera in. Maybe not shoot their faces or whatever, but we'll shoot that. Then when we go into networks, we're gonna kind of figure it out and see what we'll ask them permission, or maybe we'll do pre and post reports on how it goes. So we'll kind of negotiate that, because at the same time we want to give the show the best chance to be sold too, so that people can experience that. Because if we do sell the show, we'll continue with the online series where we'll show people how we write a pilot, how we shoot a pilot, budgeting, how to get a pilot picked up, the dreaded audience testing, all that stuff.
Yes, and in addition to that, didn't you sign a big deal with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, or was that just something I saw on Facebook?
That was a fan that our fans are nutballs, and they do a lot of memes and stuff, and do a lot of Photoshop work. So yeah, that was not real. However, we did just sell a pilot to HBO. That we're developing, and then we have another pilot that we sold to a network, and we can't announce it yet until the deal is fully closed, which should be happening, any day now. We keep checking our emails to see if it maybe even would happen today, but
okay.
But yeah, we'll be announcing that. Yeah, the Mark Zuckerberg thing was the idea of comedy from one of our fans.
I was suckered by a meme, huh?
I'm right there with you. I am I'm super naive with that stuff. I think it's all real.
Right on. Well, let's see. So in Quick Draw, I've noticed that you kind of try to stay true to some historical facts, or am I just like kind of imagining that? In like your production of Quick Draw, you have the comedy, but then you have pay tribute to what actually happened historically. Was that a conscious decision, or?
Yeah, that was. We knew if you're going to set something in history, by definition, you're going to be dealing with some historical content, and it's sort of like, how far do you want to go? And The more we started reading about what really started, because we had a historical consultant who came on to the show and started feeding us stuff. And some of the stuff we saw just blew us away and just inspired us. For example, you know, there's a there was a lot of prostitution in the 1800s, a lot, and one our historical consultant sent us a steam powered vibrator that was used. That we were just like, "Are you kidding me? Is this real?" And he was like, "Yep, absolutely real." And many other things, like people who you thought you knew. For example, like Cole Younger is a very famous outlaw. He is a lead character in Quick Draw, and many we have him in a scene in an episode where he goes in disguise dressed as a woman. Now, Cole Younger used to do this quite a bit. He would When he would rob banks, he would dress up, would cross dress in order to escape being noticed. So lots of little things like that, and a lot of the characters in the show are real characters, and a lot of the stuff that they talk about is real. And even though the show is improvised, we would feed the actors who were playing real characters. We would feed them a lot of the actual historical content that their character participated in too. So it was cool. It's one of my favorite parts of the show.
But if say something funny happened that didn't go along with like had a take where it was accurate and then a take that was funny, which one would you choose? That wasn't quite accurate.
We would probably justify the inaccurate one in the scene. So if somebody said something that was inaccurate and I knew it was inaccurate, I would probably try to explain what really went down in a way that didn't totally throw out their thing. So I guess my answer is kind of a BS answer, which is we would try to have both. We would try to have the funny and the real. But if it was totally inaccurate, we probably would not use it, to be honest with you. If it was just way, way out there. I mean, we did a lot of inaccurate stuff on the show. Don't get me wrong. A ton of inaccurate stuff. But we justified it vis-a-vis the character. So the character thought it was true, even if it wasn't actually historically correct.
Okay, so it's just a truth to the character, but the audience member knew that the character was wrong.
Yes, and the character didn't know exactly. So within the world, even though the world was totally absurd, it all made some sort of logical sense. So it's anachronistic, but to the character, he truly believes it's happening in that moment. So we're kind of messing around with facts and, nutballs craziness, because we want it to be funny, obviously.
Yes, and you can't sacrifice the humor completely.
Right.
Okay, John, on Uncontained, there's an aspect to the show that I like to get information and advice from the person that I'm talking to in whatever field they're in. So for you, it'd be in acting and getting a show made.
Yeah.
For our guests, for our entertainers who are just getting started out, because I think it's important to get advice from entertainers at all levels.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the people at the way top don't relate to the people who are just starting out, and the people starting out don't relate to the people who are further on. Mm-hmm. So what advice would you have for somebody who is trying to make it in the entertainment industry?
Yeah, I guess my first piece of advice would be to go out and shoot. If you think you want to make a TV show, or you think you want to make something for a streaming channel, or you want to make a film, my first piece of advice would be, hey, try to shoot something, because I think we learn by doing, and cinematography and production and actually making a TV show encompasses all sorts of things, from directing, acting, writing, editing, all of it. And nowadays, with prosumer equipment, you can do it yourself. So if you're a writer, write something and see if you can't, through whatever social networking, try to find like-minded people who want to make something together. Because, man, I mean, once you're on a set, I think you realize the limitations and the infinity of it, and it's an awesome experience, and you've made something. So that'd be my first piece of advice.
Anything else you want to throw in there besides watch your Howler TV special on how to get a show made,
Yeah, I would do that for sure.
or including that actually?
And I would get out there and perform. There's also a lot of classes that are offered out there, and people go back and forth on that. There's a lot of shady scam, especially out in LA places, acting classes or writing classes or whatever. But the good thing about a class is that you're surrounded by like-minded people. You're surrounded by people who are trying to make it and make stuff. And I think that kind of networking really helps because you hear how other people are trying to do stuff. Same thing with actors, getting into a play, or writers getting into a writer's workshop. Those kinds of things can really help. Not so much about what you learn, although you do, but really more about who you meet and who you get to talk to.
All right, great. Yeah, so just get out there and make things,
Yep.
and surround yourself with people who are of the same mindset and have the same goals as you, correct?
Exactly.
My show being named Uncontained. Basically, uncontained means going against the societal norms, people telling you can't do it, you can't. Successful podcast host, figure skater, or even an actor who ad-libs all of his lines, you know? So how do you go out and live uncontained?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of support. My partner Nancy and I talk about that all the time. Like, we're just like, oh my God, can you imagine trying to do this by yourself? And the fact that we have each other, I think makes all the difference, because we're able to, bounce stuff off each other, especially when things aren't going well and when things are going well. Because both when things aren't going well and when things aren't going well, both of those are examples of drama. And in drama, that's when you can tend to, maybe make mistakes. So to have a soundboard, to have somebody to bounce something off, I think is huge. It's huge. Because I mean, we may be out there doing something that we don't know anybody else who's trying to do exactly what we're doing. We know people who are doing similar things, but the exact kind of sort of wide open improvisational style that we're doing, we don't know anybody else that's out there doing it. So we don't have, and when you're uncontained, you're doing something that maybe there isn't a lot of people out there doing what you're doing. So having somebody, in our case, a partnership, that makes all the difference.
Okay, great. Now, before I completely wrap things up, I would like to say thank you to Dan Hampel, who's a social media friend of yours who helped set up this interview.
Yeah.
And also, I just want to thank you for coming on and give you a chance to tell people where they can get a hold of you.
Well, thanks, Aaron. And yeah, a huge thanks to Dan. He's one of our supporters out there, and it means a lot. Best way to reach me is at www.howler.tv, HOWLER. I'm also on Facebook and at John Lehr on Twitter.
All right, great. And John, I've been having my guests sign off the show for me. It's real simple. Basically, it's your name and live uncontained with your own flair to it, or whatever you want to add to it. Could you do me the honor of signing us off the show today?
You bet. This is John Lehr, living my life uncontained. So out of the box, there is no box.
And that does it for another episode of Uncontained. Thank you for listening, and hope you all have a great Labor Day weekend. And I will be talking at you soon with brand new episodes on the way. Remember, until next time, live uncontained.